Welcome back to Carolina Journal Radio. I'm Donna Martinez. A federal appeals court has struck down the state of Arkansas's requirement that able-bodied adults who are receiving Medicaid in that state also have a job or be involved in some related activity. So the question now is, what impact could that decision have on North Carolina and other states? Jordan Roberts is the healthcare policy analyst for the Locke Foundation. He's been taking a look at this very question and joins us now. Jordan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What did the appeals court rule?
So what the appeals court said was that Arkansas's decision to impose work requirements and the Secretary of Health and Human Services' decision to allow that work requirement was counter to the objective of Medicaid. And statutorily, Medicaid says it's just a means to provide health coverage to people. So by mandating that there be a work requirement or anything else like community engagement, that judge said that was capricious and arbitrary in his decision, in the Secretary's decision to allow this to go forward. So basically, it's not what Medicaid was for, is what the judge said.
Well, if someone is a working age and able-bodied, but for some reason they're on the Medicaid program, is there any common sense reason that that person would not be out working or actively involved in job training, something like that?
Well, there's exemptions in these programs for people with disabilities or people who are taking care of children. So these are the like you said, able-bodied working adults. And the idea is that if we can, encourage people to get a job or go out and seek employment or community engagement in some way, those lead to improved health outcomes. They may find a job that offers health insurance. And so, this is just a sort of nudge to get people, more independent and off of government assistance by finding work.
And in fact, your description is apt, because we've heard that argument here in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And to make sure our listeners understand, North Carolina has not expanded Medicaid under Obamacare. Mm-hmm. But North Carolina, like the other states, does have a Medicaid program mm-hmm. that is shared funding from the feds and the state of North Carolina. So give us a sense of how our Medicaid program works. We don't require people to work, correct?
Correct. That's right.
All right. But we have heard from some of the advocates for expanding Medicaid that, the only way that it would be acceptable across the political aisle would be perhaps to have a work requirement. Mm-hmm. But Jordan, now that the appeals court has ruled that, what does that mean? Well,
that means that the Republican alternative to Medicaid expansion, the Carolina Cares or Healthcare for Working Families Act, which is essentially just Medicaid expansion with a work requirement, that means that bill is essentially dead. States have been granted work requirements that haven't been challenged in court, but they're not going forward with them because of the precedent set now by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. So, if North Carolina wanted to, they could try to go forward. It would almost undoubtedly be challenged in court, and given the rulings from the appeals court, it doesn't seem like it's likely to hold up. So, Medicaid expansion is still bad policy for North Carolina. Even with a work requirement, we don't think we should do it here. But, for states that do have expanded Medicaid and would like, this work requirement to be in place for their able-bodied population receiving Medicaid, this option is off the table now, which, may, go against their plans in their states, but
that's going to be fascinating to see what these other states do, because now they're, I'm sure, questioning, oh my gosh, we have this work requirement, what does this mean? And is it fair to say, Jordan, that in at least some of those states that have expanded Medicaid under Obamacare, the reasoning and the selling point was, we will impose a work requirement. So there's kind of a give and take, so to speak,
Absolutely.
In exchange for adding someone to the government program that they'll be out working.
Right. And, that's what we've seen here in North Carolina. Governor Cooper was willing to go along with the Republicans' Medicaid expansion program because, it achieves his goal of expanding Medicaid and, a little concession to the Republicans. Here's the work requirement. But, we knew all along that the governor didn't really support that plan. He was just going along with it in an attempt to get Medicaid expansion in North Carolina, knowing that the courts eventually would probably strike it down. So as it stands now, Medicaid expansion in North Carolina, with or without a work requirement, doesn't seem like it has a path forward.
You know, there may be some of our listeners, Jordan, who are thinking, my gosh, this Jordan Roberts guy, you know, he has no compassion. He's saying, no, we're not going to add 500,000 to 600,000 people to the Medicaid rolls here in North Carolina. And it's an important discussion, Jordan, because you certainly are not saying that you don't care about people and that we don't have a problem about accessing affordable insurance and care. So if not Medicaid, then what?
Well, yeah, you know, that's a great point. You know, conservatives all often get a bad label saying, you know, you don't care about poor people. It's just we have different means to get to the same end. We want everyone to have, you know, as much access to affordable health care as possible, but we know the current system doesn't provide that. But, you know, luckily there are some nonprofit private organizations that are stepping up to, you know, fill the void where the current system is, you know, falling short from people. And one of those is a nonprofit in New York called RIP Medical Debt. And what this company does is it sponsors campaigns all around the country, and, you know, individuals raise money, hand over the money to RIP Medical Debt, and what they do is they purchase portfolios of old medical debt held by those at the bottom end of the income spectrum for pennies on the dollar and completely forgive the penalty debt-free. And, you know, there's already been a ton of successful campaigns. They've wiped out hundreds of millions of dollars of old medical debt. It's a great return on investment because every dollar they raise on average can wipe out $100 in medical debt. And, you know, this is helping people that, you know, fell victim to a surprise bill, things like that, you know, that just got an unexpected high bill that they can't pay.
Now, I know that you aren't telling the full story here about RIP medical debt. You've described it accurately, of course, but our listeners, I think, would be interested to know that this isn't just theory for you, Jordan. You actually have been involved with this program, and yourself, through your supporters, you've raised more than $30,000 to wipe out the long-term medical debt of low-income North and South Carolinians. Congratulations, number one. That is awesome. But Jordan, talk a little bit, if you would, about the importance of nonprofits and individual people just helping other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a incredible success with my fundraiser. We were able to raise a ton of money that'll go to wipe out debt held by those in North and South Carolina, our community members. But I think what RIP medical debt represents, while not a panacea, there are plenty of options for the private market to step up and really accomplish some of the goals of where the current system is falling short. And we know that through many reasons there are procedures that aren't paid for by insurance, or people may not have the means to pay for a procedure and they get slapped with a huge bill that they can't afford. And lingering medical debt can be crushing for a family. And so what we wanted to do was raise money as a private entity and really help these people out that may feel like they have no other options. But hopefully in the next couple months they'll be getting a letter in the mail that says their medical debt will be wiped out and they can move on with their lives.
Yeah, that is a life-altering event for a lot of these folks who have been dogged by this and really didn't have much hope or prospect of being able to pay it off just because of their economic circumstances. And so this is a real-world example of how it doesn't require government to be involved.
That's right.
We as individuals, through our civic groups, nonprofit groups, churches, etc., can all gather together, identify the need, and work with a nonprofit that really can make a difference in people's lives. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Jordan, how can folks find out more about that particular program and others? Of course, they can read your work at johnlocke.org.
Yeah, well, I encourage them to go on to ripmedicaldebt.com and see if there's a local campaign near you going on. I know there's several around this area, but there's also plenty of other nonprofits that do real work helping people get the care they need and do so without the government getting involved. So look out for those.
Jordan Roberts is the healthcare policy analyst for the John Locke Foundation. Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks, Donna.